I want to get your reaction on something. Can you pull up the Shamat clip? Can you pull up the Shamat? So Shamat, you know, billionaire, former owner of the Golden State Warriors. They run a very good podcast, himself, David Sachs, and his peers. And Shamat, when he says things, he's not coming from a sensational, emotional. He just kind of says it the way it is. He's not a Trump guy. He didn't vote for Trump. He voted for Biden. He voted for Hillary. And then he just recently said this, I think last week. Go for it.
When Trump was elected, I was told that it was the end of the world, and that's what I thought. And I'd already underwritten him as an F, okay? And then 4 years into the presidency, he was probably like a C in my mind. And then as I get a little bit of distance away, I realized, no, hold on a second. This guy was like a B+. Like, he was pretty good. I voted for Hillary Clinton. I voted for Joe Biden. But this is the honest assessment. The guy did, for the things that he was supposed to do, a good job. And for where every other president found a way to, frankly, make our situation a little bit worse, specifically around wars, he did not do that. And that is a huge accomplishment that I think needs to be acknowledged.
I think the thing that was smart about Trump was that he was willing to do business.
Yes.
He was willing to negotiate, and he didn't feel the need to make these moral condemnations all the time. He was willing to meet with Kim Jong-un. He was willing to meet with Putin and Xi Jinping, and he avoided criticizing them personally. He didn't call them dictators. He talked about how smart they are.
Yeah.
It's the art of the deal, right? I mean, at the end of the day, he's looking to do business.
So here we are today on the Valuetainment channel. We have Patrick Bet-David hosting, and he's got his co-hosts, and their guest is Ana Kasparian from the Young Turks. And as you can see, they were looking at a clip where some billionaires were talking about how, you know, some non-Trump voting billionaires were talking about how actually Trump wasn't that bad, and it turned out he did a pretty good job. Wow. How smart do you have to be a billionaire? All you have to do is look at the guy's record, and you can see that he actually did a pretty good job. You know, if people could just, if all the haters could just stand back and say, okay, I don't like Trump as a person, you know, for whatever reason, but let's look at his actual policies. Yeah, what can you say is wrong with his policies? Anyway, so Patrick Bet-David and his co-hosts are looking at that, and now PBD is going to talk to Ana Kasparian. So let's see what she has to say about Trump, Trump's first term, and maybe his next term.
This is not a pro-Trump podcast, this right here with Shamat and those guys. They're just kind of having a conversation. David Sachs even did a Twitter Spaces. The first one they did for DeSantis. Him and Musk were wanting DeSantis to be the guy. They're not somebody that's want to get behind Trump. And it seems to be there's more and more players like Shamat who are coming out saying, look, man, I couldn't stand the guy. I didn't agree with the guy. But if I have to choose between him and Biden, dude, what is going on today in the world, like with Iran, with Israel, with Hamas, with Ukraine, with Russia, with economy, all this stuff? What the hell is going on? Yeah, okay, I don't like him, but I would much rather have him than who we have today. What is your reaction to what Shamat said?
My reaction to that is, look, you can look at the policies that he implemented and grade him on that, but I think that's entirely separate from my genuine concerns about Donald Trump, and they're not policy related at this point. I do have some disagreements policy-wise, but putting that aside, look, I think it's really important to protect our liberal democracy. And you know what I mean by that, right? When I say liberal democracy, I'm not referring to liberal Democrats.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Separation of powers, voting, like a democratic process. I am concerned, especially following, you know, what happened with the fake electors and all of that, right? I am concerned that Donald Trump doesn't value our liberal democracy, and he has said as such. I mean, in a fairly recent rally, he talked about, you know, solidifying and increasing power at the executive branch, which is, by the way, very similar to what led to mass protests against Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. Mm-hmm. He wanted to essentially disempower the judiciary in that country. And the Israelis stood up to that because they realized that it is a gross violation of their liberal democracy. And so that is my biggest concern with Trump. At this point, honestly, if I objectively step back and I look at what people had the biggest issues in regard to Trump's policies were, right? Like the biggest issues were his treatment of migrants. But then you look at the Biden administration And he continued a lot of those policies until a federal judge said, no, the COVID era is over. You can't use that as an excuse in basically preventing asylum seekers from coming into the country. So asylum seekers started coming back into the country as a result of that. But Biden wanted to just continue Trump-era policies on immigration, and the same Democrats who made Trump out to be the devil as a result of those policies, totally quiet about Biden, totally quiet, okay? There's just like so many examples of that double standard that like now if I look at Trump and I compare him to a typical corporate Democrat, there are differences too. I don't want to make it seem like they're totally the same, but there are similarities, and a lot of those similarities have to do with the issues that Democratic voters claim to have a problem with Trump on. So I don't fear Trump policy-wise the way I did before, but I do fear what would happen to our liberal democracy under a second Trump term.
Can you?
So there we go. Just when she's starting to make sense, Ana Kasparian was talking sense there. She was saying, Trump's policies were Trump's policies. You can be for or against them. People are always for or against certain policies of a given president. And she said herself that Trump's immigration policy was simply continued by Biden, and all the people who complained about Trump's immigration policies, all the liberals and Democrats who complained about it during Trump's presidency, suddenly shut up when those same policies continued during Biden's presidency. Very good point, but that's typical, obviously. That's just the way it is in politics. So she's making perfect sense, and then, of course, at the end there, she has to say, I worry what's going to happen to our liberal democracy if Trump gets a second term. Well, Trump already had a first term, and nothing happened to our liberal democracy. She's acting like he can just get into office and just shut down the branches of government he doesn't like, just dismiss, ignore the courts or whatever it is specifically she's worried about. It's complete nonsense. And I'm surprised she didn't mention J6 there. And even that, which all the Democrats and leftists are calling, they still refer to it as an insurrection or a coup. But in fact, it was no such thing. And our liberal democracy survived it just fine because it wasn't a coup or an insurrection at all, obviously. So despite the fact she's been making progress, she still has some way to go, but let's see if she explains herself further here.
Unpack that, please.
I'm worried that he won't leave. I'm worried that he will disempower other branches of government in order to increase the power of the executive branch. So
To have a third term, fourth term, like that's kind of what you're thinking?
I'm worried that he won't leave after his term is over.
Sorry to stop again. She's worried he won't leave after her term is over. Well, we saw what happened after his last term was over. He bitched and moaned. If you're an anti-Trumper, for example, yeah, he moaned and groaned and said the results were, said the election was rigged and all those things. And even according to them, according to the anti-Trumpers, he incited an insurrection. Yet he left. On the appointed day, he left. He did what he had to do. Yeah, he bitched and moaned. Of course, he's Trump, He's not going to go down without a fight. But he left. So why? Why does she think he won't leave? He can't stay. It's just not the way it works. It's just ridiculous. He's still living in her head. And Anna's quite a reasonable, progressive, as she calls herself, Ana Kasparian is, compared to, say, her co-host, Cenk, on the Young Turks. So if she's thinking this way, God knows what all the other deranged anti-Trumpers are thinking.
I am concerned about that.
You're worried he won't?
Yeah, how do you implement something like that? Because I'm right there with you. The whole concept of this mixed media diet. In 2015, 2016, I basically didn't even work that year. I kind of had a nice exit from my company. I just sat around and watched MSNBC all day. I watched Morning Joe every morning, okay?
That's what it is.
Straight up. But, we were fed this bowl of
That explains a lot about Adam.
lies. And like most Americans who are watching traditional mainstream media, I fell for it. You got me. And just like the Mueller report, if we've seen the Durham report come out recently, it's kind of like, they got us. But most people, I think, double down on what they believe. There's confirmation bias.
Totally.
They're not willing to say, like you said, hold themselves accountable and be like, yep, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Yep, I got it wrong. Especially journalists. Most journalists these days, you talked about where journalism was and like sort of like the journalism of the past. Most journalists these days are essentially activists.
Right.
Whether you're on Fox News, you're Hannity, you're aligned with Trump, whether you're on CNN and you're Don Lemon, whatever, you're literally crying when Trump is out of office. So this mixed media diet. So it's almost like for you personally, you're almost like a woman without a home, it seems, or maybe even a birthing person without a home.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Here we go. Here. Where do you go from here? Doesn't sound like
Right.
you're a Trump fan. Doesn't sound like you have any love for Biden or even a Newsom candidacy. Where do you go from here? Where do you absorb your media diet? Like, unpack all that for me. And to be clear, Trump, like, how do you come up to the assumption that he's just never going to leave office? How does that happen?
It's not an assumption. It's just based on his past behavior. You know, it's totally based on his past behavior and his like unwillingness to accept the election results. And by the way, I mean, I'm not a fan of Joe Biden.
He did accept the election results. This is, yeah, he complained about them. He claimed that there were irregularities in the elections, which I think is a pretty reasonable claim, given how the insane way elections are organized in the United States. I just can't believe it. Compared to here, in my unnamed Western European country where I've lived for, over 30 years, elections are simplicity themselves here. But of course, here in European countries, everybody has a national ID card, which you have to carry on you at all time. And that ID card, of course, is used when you go to vote. So you don't have to register to vote. You are already registered. If you're a citizen and have one of these ID cards, you are already registered to vote. And you just go to the voting station on the day of the election. You know, you stick your card in a machine, choose your candidates, choose your parties. And it's all registered. It's all very simple. Now, that won't work in the United States because, of course, you don't have a centralized system. In European countries, everything is pretty centralized. It's not, they don't, even if they have provinces and states, typically those provinces and states or other administrative subdivisions don't have the kind of powers that American states have. So anyway, it's all very simple here. And the American system just seems ridiculous in many ways, which we won't go into detail here. But so be it. America's different from Europe, which is good. It's a good thing. I wouldn't want America to be the same in any way. And Europe's different from America. Wouldn't want Europe to be like America. But in any case, so she didn't even explain herself. She just says, I don't think he'll leave based on past behavior. He didn't accept the election results. Yes, he did. The guy left. What is she saying? Yeah, he'll probably do the same thing. If he loses this election, he will probably do the same thing. He will probably complain and say it was rigged, and he'll beat Trump. He'll do what Trump does. But come next January, when if he loses, and the next president will walk in and take her place. So there we go. That's what will happen. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. If Anna's just up and down. Ana Kasparian of the Young Turks, she's just up and down. She's coming across very reasonably, and then suddenly she just says something that makes zero sense at all. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe in the meantime. Really helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.